The dust from the stagecoach still hung in the air when Katherine Reynolds stepped down onto the hard, packed earth of Fort Worth, Texas, her legs trembling from 3 weeks of travel that had left her bones rattling and her spirit nearly broken. She clutched a worn carpetbag in one hand and a letter in the other, the paper soft from countless readings during her journey from Philadelphia. The words offering hope of employment as a housekeeper for a ranch somewhere outside this God-forsaken town in the year of our Lord, 1873. The advertisement had been vague, promising only honest work and fair wages. But Katherine had learned in her 22 years that beggars could not afford to be choosers, especially not widows whose husbands had gambled away every cent before catching a bullet in a card game gone wrong. The main street of Fort Worth stretched before her like a challenge, wide and dusty, lined with wooden buildings that seemed to lean into each other as if sharing secrets. Saloons outnumbered respectable establishments 3-1, and even at midday, the tinny sound of piano music drifted from behind swinging doors. Katherine adjusted her black morning dress, suddenly aware of how out of place she looked among the rough men who paused to stare at her with undisguised interest. She had been pretty once, or so people told her, with dark hair that caught red in the sunlight and eyes the color of spring grass, but 2 years of marriage to Thomas Reynolds had dimmed whatever light she once possessed. "You lost, madam." A voice cut through her thoughts, gruff but not unkind. Katherine turned to find a man watching her from beneath the brim of a weather-beaten hat, his face shadowed, but his posture suggesting someone used to being obeyed. He stood beside a wagon hitched to 2 sturdy horses, his frame tall and lean in the way of men who worked with their bodies instead of sitting behind desks. Something in his stance reminded her of a wolf she had seen once in a traveling menagerie, all coiled strength and watchful intelligence. "I am looking for Ryder Vaughn," she said, forcing her voice to remain steady despite the exhaustion that threatened to buckle her knees. "I answered his advertisement for a housekeeper." The man's expression shifted, though Katherine could not quite read the emotion that crossed his features. He removed his hat, revealing dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of storm clouds over the prairie. His face was weathered but handsome in a rough-hewn way, with a strong jaw shadowed by several days' worth of stubble and a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. "I am Ryder Vaughn," he said, and his voice carried the flat vowels of someone who had spent years under the Texas sun. "You must be Mrs. Reynolds. I did not expect you for another week." "The schedule changed," Katherine explained, though in truth she had simply taken the first available passage west, desperate to escape Philadelphia and the debtors who circled like vultures around her late husband's remains. "If this is inconvenient, I can find lodging in town until you are ready." Ryder's eyes swept over her, taking in the shabby morning dress, the worn bag, the way she swayed slightly on her feet. Something flickered in his gaze, gone too quickly for Katherine to identify, but it made her skin warm in a way that had nothing to do with the Texas heat. "No need for that," he said, settling his hat back on his head. "The ranch is ready enough. I can only offer you work, hard work at that. The place has not seen a woman's touch in 5 years, not since my mother passed. It will take more than dusting and sweeping to set things right." The words were practical, almost harsh in their honesty, but the way he looked at her promised something more than just an employer assessing a new employee. His gaze lingered on her face with an intensity that made Katherine's breath catch, as if he were memorizing her features, or perhaps seeing past the widow's weeds to the woman beneath. It had been so long since anyone had looked at her with anything resembling interest that she hardly knew how to respond. "I am not afraid of hard work," Katherine said, lifting her chin. I may not look like much right now, but I assure you I can earn my keep." A ghost of a smile touched Ryder's lips, transforming his severe features into something warmer. "I believe you, Mrs. Reynolds. Come on then, daylight is burning and it is a 2-hour ride to the ranch." He took her bag before she could protest, tossing it into the back of the wagon with an ease that spoke of considerable strength, then offered his hand to help her up onto the seat. Katherine hesitated only a moment before accepting, feeling the rough calluses on his palm and the gentle firmness of his grip. He held her hand perhaps a beat longer than necessary, his eyes meeting hers with that same intense look that made her heart skip in an unfamiliar rhythm. The wagon lurched into motion, and Katherine gripped the wooden seat as Fort Worth fell away behind them. The landscape opened up before them, vast and wild and beautiful in a way that made her chest tighten. She had never seen so much sky, stretching endlessly overhead in a brilliant blue dome unmarred by the factory smoke she had grown accustomed to in Philadelphia. The prairie grass rippled in the wind like waves on an ocean, and in the distance she could see the dark shapes of cattle grazing. They rode in silence for several minutes, the only sounds the creak of the wagon wheels, the rhythmic clip-clop of the horses' hooves, and the occasional call of a bird she could not name. Katherine found herself stealing glances at the man beside her, studying his profile when she thought he was not looking. Ryder sat with the ease of someone who spent most of his life in the saddle, his hands light on the reins, his body moving with the motion of the wagon rather than fighting against it. "You mentioned your mother," Katherine ventured finally, unable to bear the silence any longer. "Do you run the ranch alone?" "Mostly," Ryder said, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "I have 3 ranch hands who help with the cattle and horses. Good men, but not much for keeping a house in order. We have been batching it for too long, I reckon. The place looks more like a stable than a home these days. And your father, dead 10 years now, Comanche raid." The words were clipped, matter of fact, but Katherine heard the old pain beneath them. "My mother held on as long as she could, but I think losing him broke something in her. She just faded away, little by little, until there was nothing left." Katherine knew that kind of grief, the slow erosion of the spirit under the weight of loss. "I am sorry," she said softly. "That must have been very difficult." Ryder glanced at her, and for a moment his expression softened. "Life out here is not easy for anyone, but it is especially hard on women. My mother loved my father so much that she could not find a reason to keep going without him. I have always thought that was the saddest thing, to love someone so much that their absence makes the world unbearable." There was something in his voice that made Katherine wonder if he spoke from personal experience beyond just his mother's death, but she did not feel it was her place to pry. "Instead," she said, "sometimes the greatest loves are the ones that break us the most completely." "You sound like you speak from experience, Mrs. Reynolds." Katherine let out a bitter laugh before she could stop herself. "My late husband and I did not share that kind of love, Mr. Vaughn. Ours was a marriage of convenience that became inconvenient very quickly. I mourned him because it is expected, not because I could not live without him." She regretted the words as soon as they left her mouth, shocked by her own candor. She had not spoken so honestly about her marriage to anyone, not even her own sister. But something about Ryder Vaughn and the vast openness of the Texas prairie made her feel like she could say things that would have been scandalous back in Philadelphia. Ryder did not look shocked or judgmental. Instead, he nodded slowly. "An honest woman. That is rare enough to be precious out here. I appreciate plain speaking, Mrs. Reynolds. Saves a lot of trouble in the long run. Please call me Katherine," she said. "I think we can dispense with excessive formality if we are going to be living under the same roof." His eyes met hers again, and this time she was certain she saw warmth in their gray depths. "Katherine," he repeated, and the way he said her name, drawing out the syllables in his Texas drawl, made something flutter in her stomach. "Then you should call me Ryder. No sense standing on ceremony when we are miles from anywhere." The ranch appeared on the horizon like a mirage, a collection of buildings clustered around a sprawling single-story house with a deep porch that wrapped around 3 sides. As they drew closer, Katherine could see the peeling paint, the sagging steps, the windows dulled by years of dust. But she could also see the good bones beneath the neglect, the solid construction that spoke of care taken long ago, the large windows positioned to catch the breeze, the cottonwood trees that provided precious shade. "It is not much to look at right now," Ryder said, and Katherine heard embarrassment in his voice. "But it was beautiful once. My father built it for my mother when they first married. She used to keep flowers in boxes under every window. It has good bones," Katherine said firmly. "A little work will bring it back to life." Ryder pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the house and jumped down, then came around to help Katherine descend. This time, when his hands closed around her waist to lift her down, she felt the strength in his arms, the sureness of his touch. He set her on her feet but did not immediately let go, and for a moment they stood frozen, barely a breath apart, his hands still resting on her waist. Katherine looked up into his face and saw something raw and hungry in his expression, quickly shuddered behind his usual reserve. "I should show you inside," he said, stepping back abruptly, and Katherine wondered if she had imagined the moment of connection. The interior of the house confirmed Ryder's warning about the state of things. Dust covered every surface, cobwebs draped the corners, and the furniture looked like it had not been properly cleaned in years. But Katherine also saw the beautiful wood floors beneath the dirt, the sturdy furniture that just needed polish and care, the stone fireplace that dominated one wall of the main room. It was a house waiting to be loved again. "Your room is through here," Ryder said, leading her down a short hallway to a bedroom that faced east. It was simply furnished with a bed, a dresser, and a washstand, but the mattress looked clean and the window let in good light. "It was my mother's sewing room. I hope it will suit." "It is perfect," Katherine assured him, setting her bag on the bed. "Much better than I expected, truly." Ryder lingered in the doorway, seeming reluctant to leave. "The hands will be in for supper around sunset. I usually cook, but I will not pretend I am any good at it. Beans and bacon, mostly. Biscuits when I remember how." Katherine smiled, feeling the first stirrings of purpose since leaving Philadelphia. "Then I will take over the cooking starting tonight. It is what you hired me for, after all." "I hired you to keep house," Ryder corrected, "but if you can cook better than I can, I will not complain. Neither will the men." He paused, then added, "There is one thing I should make clear, Katherine. The hands are good men, but they have been without female company for a long time. If any of them bother you or make you uncomfortable, you tell me immediately." "Understood." The protectiveness in his voice warmed Katherine in a way she had not expected. "I understand. Thank you, Ryder." He nodded and finally left, closing the door behind him with a soft click. Katherine sank down onto the bed, her legs finally giving out from exhaustion. She had traveled thousands of miles to work as a housekeeper for a stranger, and yet somehow she did not feel like Ryder Vaughn was a stranger at all. The way he looked at her, with that mixture of reserve and barely concealed longing, made her feel seen in a way she had never experienced before. She unpacked her meager belongings, hanging her 2 dresses in the small wardrobe and arranging her brush and mirror on the dresser. Then she explored the house more thoroughly, taking mental notes of what needed to be done. The kitchen was better equipped than she had hoped, with a good cast iron stove and plenty of pots and pans, though everything needed a thorough scrubbing. She found flour and cornmeal in the pantry, along with dried beans, salt pork, and various other staples. Katherine rolled up her sleeves and got to work. She pumped water from the well outside and heated it on the stove, then began washing every dish and utensil she could find. The physical labor felt good after weeks of sitting in cramped stage coaches. She found herself humming as she worked, something she had not done in years. She was elbow-deep in dishwater when Ryder appeared in the kitchen doorway. He had changed his shirt and washed the dust from his face, his dark hair still damp and curling slightly at his collar. He watched her for a moment before speaking, his expression unreadable. "You did not have to start today," he said. "I expected you would want a rest after your journey." Katherine turned to face him, wiping her hands on the apron she had found hanging on a hook. "Staying busy keeps me from thinking too much. Besides, I could not abide eating off dirty dishes. My mother used to say the same thing." The words slipped out before Ryder seemed to realize he was going to say them, and Katherine saw a flash of vulnerability cross his face. "She would have liked you, I think." "I wish I could have met her," Katherine said honestly. Any woman who could make a home in this wild country must have been remarkable. Ryder crossed the kitchen in 3 long strides, stopping close enough that Katherine could smell the clean scent of soap and something else, something distinctly masculine. "Katherine," he began, then seemed to lose his words. His hand lifted as if to touch her face, then dropped back to his side. "I should let you work. The men will be here soon." But he did not move, and neither did Katherine. They stood there in the kitchen with the late afternoon sun slanting through the window, gilding everything in gold, and something unspoken passed between them. Katherine felt her pulse quicken, felt an answering warmth low in her belly that she had thought died with her disastrous marriage. "Ryder," she whispered, not even sure what she was asking for. The sound of horses and men's voices broke the spell. Ryder stepped back, running a hand through his damp hair. "That will be the hands. I should introduce you." The 3 ranch hands trooped in through the back door, stopping short when they saw Katherine. They were younger than she expected, probably all in their early 20s, with sun-weathered faces and bashful expressions. "Boys, this is Mrs. Reynolds, our new housekeeper," Ryder announced. "You will treat her with respect and mind your manners in the house. Mrs. Reynolds, this is Jack Miller, Sam Cooper, and Will Thompson." The 3 men removed their hats in unison, mumbling greetings. Katherine smiled at them warmly, amused by their obvious discomfort. "It is nice to meet you all," she said. "I hope you are hungry. I am making fried chicken and biscuits for supper." The transformation was immediate. 3 pairs of eyes lit up with desperate hope, and Jack, the tallest of the trio, actually clutched his hat to his chest dramatically. "Real fried chicken?" he asked. "Madam, I have not had real fried chicken since I left home 3 years ago." "Real fried chicken," Katherine confirmed, laughing despite herself. "Now all of you get cleaned up and set the table. If you expect me to cook, you can at least help with the serving." They scattered like startled rabbits, and Katherine caught Ryder watching her with something that looked suspiciously like admiration. "You have them eating out of your hand already," he observed. "Hungry men are easy to manage," Katherine said lightly. "Feed them well and they will do just about anything you ask." "I will keep that in mind," Ryder said, and the way he looked at her made Katherine's cheeks warm. Supper that night was a revelation. The men ate with an enthusiasm that was deeply satisfying to Katherine, praising every bite and reaching for seconds and thirds until the platter was clean and the biscuit basket empty. Even Ryder, who had been quiet throughout the meal, looked more relaxed than he had all day, the harsh lines around his mouth softening as he watched his men enjoy the food. After supper, the hands excused themselves to the bunkhouse, leaving Katherine and Ryder alone in the kitchen. She began clearing the dishes, but Ryder stopped her with a gentle hand on her arm. "Leave them," he said. "You have done enough for one day." "I do not mind," Katherine protested, but even as she spoke, exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. The long journey, the emotional upheaval, the hours of work, it all caught up with her at once, and she swayed on her feet. Ryder steadied her, his hands firm on her shoulders. "You are dead on your feet. The dishes can wait until morning. Go to bed, Katherine." She wanted to argue, but her body had other ideas. She nodded, letting him guide her toward her room. At the door, she turned to thank him and found herself trapped by his gaze again, those storm-gray eyes searching her face as if looking for answers to questions he had not yet asked. "Thank you," she managed, "for everything, for giving me this opportunity, for being kind." "You do not have to thank me for basic decency," Ryder said roughly. "Sleep well, Katherine. Tomorrow we can start fresh." She closed the door and leaned against it, her heart racing. She had been in this house for less than a day, and already she felt something shifting inside her, some long dormant part of herself awakening. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Katherine changed into her nightgown and climbed into bed, expecting to lie awake for hours as she usually did, her mind churning with worries and regrets. Instead, she fell asleep almost immediately, lulled by the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch and the memory of gray eyes that promised more than just work. She woke to sunlight streaming through her window and the smell of coffee brewing. For a moment, she could not remember where she was, then it all came rushing back. Texas, the ranch, Ryder Vaughn and his sad house waiting to be brought back to life. Katherine dressed quickly and made her way to the kitchen, where she found Ryder standing at the stove, pouring coffee into a tin cup. He turned when he heard her footsteps, and Katherine was struck again by how handsome he was in the morning light, his dark hair tousled and his face cleanly shaved. "Morning," he said, his voice still rough with sleep. "I did not want to wake you, but I made coffee." "I appreciate that," Katherine said, accepting the cup he handed her. Their fingers brushed, and she felt that same electric awareness that had plagued her since their first meeting. "What time is it?" "Just past 6. The hands have already headed out to check the herd in the north pasture. It will just be us today." Something about the way he said it, the quiet intimacy of the words, made Katherine's stomach flutter. They drank their coffee in comfortable silence, and then Katherine began making breakfast while Ryder sat at the kitchen table, ostensibly reading an old newspaper but actually watching her move around the kitchen. "You look at home here," he observed, startling her. "Like you belong." Katherine paused in the act of flipping flapjacks. "I have always liked cooking and keeping house. It is honest work, and there is satisfaction in doing it well. My husband never appreciated it, but that does not mean it lacks value." "Your husband was a fool," Ryder said bluntly, and when Katherine turned to look at him in surprise, she saw fierce conviction in his eyes. "Any man who did not appreciate you was a fool." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Katherine felt tears prick her eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. No one had ever defended her like that, had ever suggested that she deserved appreciation or kindness. "Thank you," she whispered, then had to clear her throat and turn back to the stove before the tears could fall. They ate breakfast together, and then Ryder showed her around the ranch properly. He took her to the barn, where she met the horses and the milk cow that no one had bothered to milk in 2 days. He showed her the chicken coop, where a dozen hens clucked around hopefully, clearly neglected. He pointed out the boundaries of the property, the creek that provided water, the cottonwood grove where his parents were buried. "It is beautiful here," Katherine said honestly. taking in the sweep of the prairie, the endless sky, the way the grass rippled in the wind like waves. Harsh, but beautiful. That is Texas, Ryder agreed. It will kill you if you are not careful, but it will also give you everything if you are strong enough to take it. He looked at her sideways. Do you think you are strong enough, Katherine? She met his gaze squarely. I made it this far, did I not? I left everything I knew, traveled thousands of miles alone, and started over with nothing but what I could carry. I may not look strong, Ryder Vaughn, but I assure you I am stronger than I appear. Something blazed in his eyes, fierce and hot. I believe you are, he said softly. I think you might be the strongest woman I have ever met. The days fell into a rhythm after that. Katherine rose with the sun and worked until after dark, scrubbing years of neglect from the house, room by room. She washed windows until they sparkled, beat rugs until the dust flew in clouds, polished furniture until she could see her reflection in the wood. She cooked 3 meals a day for Ryder and his men, proper meals with vegetables and meat and fresh bread. She tended the chickens and gathered eggs, milked the cow, planted an herb garden in the patch of dirt outside the kitchen door. And through it all, she felt Ryder watching her. He never said much, was not the type for flowery speeches or elaborate compliments, but his actions spoke louder than words. He fixed the sagging porch steps without being asked. He brought her wildflowers from the prairie, presenting them awkwardly and mumbling something about brightening up the kitchen. He sat with her in the evenings after the hands had gone to the bunkhouse, and they talked about everything and nothing, sharing pieces of their lives like gifts. Katherine learned that Ryder had been 15 when his father died, forced to become a man overnight. He had worked himself nearly to death keeping the ranch going, providing for his mother, trying to fill shoes that were too big for a boy to wear. He had never married, never even courted anyone seriously, because there had never been time, never been room in his life for anything but survival. You regret it? Katherine asked one night as they sat on the porch, watching fireflies dance in the darkness. Not having a family of your own. Ryder was quiet for a long moment. I used to think I had made my peace with being alone. The ranch was enough, or so I told myself. But lately I have been wondering if I was just afraid. Afraid of what? He turned to look at her, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. Afraid of wanting something I could not have. Afraid of caring about someone and losing them like my father lost my mother, like my mother lost my father. Afraid of being left alone again. Katherine understood that fear all too well. Sometimes being alone feels safer than risking your heart, she said softly. But is safety worth the price of never truly living? I am beginning to think it is not, Ryder said, and his hand found hers in the darkness, his fingers threading through hers with a tenderness that made her heart ache. They sat like that until the stars came out in their thousands, neither speaking, just holding hands and listening to the night sounds of the prairie. When Katherine finally rose to go to bed, Ryder stood with her, still holding her hand. "Katherine," he began, then seemed to lose his nerve. "Sleep well." "You too, Ryder," she said, squeezing his hand before letting go and retreating to her room. But sleep did not come easily that night. Katherine lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her hand still tingling from Ryder's touch. She knew she was falling for him, had been falling since the moment he lifted her down from the wagon and held her just a little too long. It was foolish and reckless, and everything she had sworn she would never do again after the disaster of her marriage. But Ryder was nothing like Thomas. Where her late husband had been weak and selfish, Ryder was strong and generous. Where Thomas had taken and taken until there was nothing left to give, Ryder gave without expectation of return. He made her feel valued, respected, desired in a way that had nothing to do with ownership and everything to do with genuine appreciation. The next morning, Katherine woke with a sense of purpose. She had been at the ranch for 3 weeks now, and the house had been transformed. Every surface gleamed. Curtains she had sewn from fabric Ryder bought in town hung at the windows, and flowers bloomed in boxes just like his mother used to keep. It was time to stop hiding behind work and admit what she was feeling. She found Ryder in the barn, mending a bridle with deft fingers. He looked up when she entered, and the smile that lit his face made her knees weak. "Morning," he said. "I was just about to come find you. I thought we could ride out to the creek today, take a break from work. You have been pushing yourself too hard." "I would like that," Katherine said, her heart hammering. "Ryder, can we talk?" His smile faded, replaced by wariness. "That sounds serious." "Maybe it is," she admitted. "Or maybe it is just me being foolish, but I need to say this before I lose my nerve." Ryder set down the bridle and gave her his full attention, those gray eyes searching her face. "I am listening." Katherine took a deep breath. "When I came here, I was running away. From my past, from my mistakes, from everything that had hurt me. I thought I would just work for you, earn my wages, and keep my heart locked away where it could not be damaged again. But you have made that impossible, Ryder. You have been so kind, so patient, so good to me. And I have fallen in love with you, even though I know that was not part of our arrangement." The words hung in the air between them, and Katherine watched a dozen emotions flash across Ryder's face, too quickly to name. Then he was moving, crossing the space between them in 2 long strides and pulling her into his arms with a fierceness that stole her breath. "Thank God," he breathed against her hair. "Katherine, I have been half out of my mind wanting you, but I was afraid to say anything. You are my employee, you have been hurt before, and I did not want to take advantage or make you uncomfortable. But I have been in love with you since the day you stepped off that stagecoach looking like you were ready to fight the whole damn world if you had to." Katherine pulled back just far enough to see his face, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You love me. So much it terrifies me," Ryder admitted, cupping her face in his calloused hands. "I know I said I could only offer you work, but I want to offer you everything, Katherine. My home, my name, my heart, all of it, if you will have me." "Yes," Katherine said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes to all of it." Ryder kissed her then, and it was nothing like the dutiful pecks Thomas had bestowed on their wedding day. This was heat and hunger and barely restrained passion. This was years of loneliness pouring out in a single moment of connection. Katherine kissed him back with equal fervor, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer even though there was no space left between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ryder rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said. "Not because you need work or a place to stay, but because I cannot imagine my life without you in it. Marry me, Katherine." "Yes," she said again, the word easy and right. "Yes, I will marry you." They rode out to the creek that afternoon, but they did not make it very far before Ryder pulled his horse to a stop and reached for Katherine, lifting her from her saddle onto his. They sat together on his horse, Katherine cradled against his chest, and talked about their future in voices full of wonder and hope. "I want a real wedding," Katherine said. "Nothing fancy, but I want to stand up in front of people and make promises to you that mean something." "We can do that," Ryder agreed. "There is a church in Fort Worth and the preacher is a decent man. We can invite the Hands and some of the neighboring ranchers, make it a proper celebration." "And then," Katherine prompted, smiling up at him. "And then I spend the rest of my life making you happy," Ryder said simply. "We build this ranch into something great. We raise a family if you want children. We grow old together. All the normal things that suddenly seem miraculous because I get to do them with you." Katherine kissed him again, softer this time, full of promise and tenderness. "I want all of that," she whispered against his lips. "Every single bit of it." They planned the wedding for a month away, time enough for Katherine to sew a proper dress and for Ryder to make arrangements. Word spread quickly through the scattered ranching community that Ryder Vaughn was finally getting married, and people were eager to celebrate. The neighboring ranchers and their families began stopping by to meet Katherine and offer their congratulations, and she found herself welcomed with a warmth she had never experienced back east. The night before the wedding, Katherine sat on the porch with Ryder, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. She wore the dress she had finished that afternoon, simple but beautiful, made of ivory silk that Ryder had ridden all the way to Dallas to purchase. "Are you nervous?" Ryder asked, his arm around her shoulders. "Not even a little," Katherine said honestly. "I have never been more certain of anything in my life. Not even worried I will turn out to be a terrible husband." He teased, though she could hear the genuine concern beneath the lightness. Katherine turned to face him, taking his face in her hands. "Ryder Vaughn, you are the best man I have ever known. You are kind and strong and honorable. You make me feel cherished and valued. You see me, truly see me, in a way no one else ever has. How could I possibly be worried?" Ryder kissed her palm, his eyes bright with emotion. "I will spend every day of my life trying to deserve you, Katherine Reynolds. That is a promise." "You already deserve me," she said firmly. "We deserve each other. We have both been alone for too long, both been hurt and hardened by life. But we found each other, and that is worth everything." The wedding took place on a brilliant Saturday morning in late September of 1873. The small church in Fort Worth was packed with people, more than Katherine had expected, all of them eager to see the reserved rancher finally take a bride. She walked down the aisle on the arm of Jack Miller, who had grown as protective of her as a brother, and her eyes never left Ryder's face. He stood at the front of the church in a new suit, his dark hair neatly combed, his eyes shining with joy and wonder as he watched her approach. When she reached him and took his hands, Katherine felt like she was finally home after a lifetime of wandering. The preacher spoke about love and commitment, about building a life together through good times and bad, but Katherine barely heard the words. She was too focused on Ryder, on the way his hands trembled slightly as he held hers, on the fierce tenderness in his expression. When it came time for the vows, Ryder's voice rang out clear and strong. "I promise to love you, Katherine, for all the days of my life, to stand beside you in trouble and triumph, to build a home with you, a real home full of love and laughter. To see you, truly see you, and cherish what I find there. This I swear before God and these witnesses." Katherine's own voice wavered with emotion as she made her promises. "I vow to love you, Ryder, with all that I am, to be your partner and your companion, to build a life with you that honors the strength we have both found in surviving our pasts, to choose you every day for as long as we both live. This I swear with all my heart." When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Ryder pulled Katherine into his arms and kissed her with a passion that scandalized some of the older ladies and made the ranch hands whoop and holler. Katherine kissed him back, not caring who saw, too happy to be self-conscious. The celebration afterward was rowdy and joyful, with food and music and dancing that lasted well into the evening. But eventually, Ryder and Katherine slipped away, riding back to the ranch under a canopy of stars. Their wedding night was everything Katherine had never known to hope for. Ryder was gentle and passionate in equal measure, taking his time to learn every inch of her body, to discover what made her gasp and sigh. He worshipped her with his hands and mouth, building pleasure slowly until Katherine thought she might shatter from the intensity of it. When they finally came together, it was with a tenderness that brought tears to Katherine's eyes. This was what making love was supposed to be, this joining of bodies and hearts and souls. This was what she had been missing in her first marriage, what she had thought might not exist outside of romantic novels. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Ryder's hand stroking Katherine's hair while she rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Ryder replied, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Thank you for taking a chance on me, Katherine, for seeing something worth loving beneath all my rough edges." "Thank you for looking at me and seeing more than just a housekeeper," Katherine said, "for promising me more than just work." Ryder chuckled softly. "I think we both got more than we bargained for." "The best kind of surprise," Katherine agreed, then yawned hugely. "Sleep, wife," Ryder murmured. "We have the rest of our lives to talk." Katherine drifted off with a smile on her face, safe and loved in her husband's arms. The months that followed were the happiest of Katherine's life. She and Ryder settled into married life with an ease that surprised them both. They worked side by side during the day, building the ranch into something prosperous and beautiful. At night, they discovered each other with the passion of new lovers and the tenderness of old friends. Winter came to the Texas prairie, bringing cold winds and occasional snow. Katherine transformed the house into a cozy haven, with fires burning in the hearth and thick quilts on the beds. She and Ryder would sit together in the evenings, her sewing while he read aloud from books they borrowed from the small library in Fort Worth. In January, Katherine discovered she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks but wanted to be certain before telling Ryder. When she finally broke the news over breakfast one morning, his reaction was everything she could have hoped for. He swept her into his arms, spinning her around the kitchen while she laughed and protested that he would make her dizzy. "We are having a baby," he kept repeating, wonder in his voice. "Katherine, we are having a baby." "I know," she said, cupping his face and kissing him soundly. "Are you happy?" "Happy does not begin to cover it," Ryder said, his hands gentle on her still flat stomach. Terrified, thrilled, grateful, all of it at once. "A baby, Katherine, our baby." The pregnancy was not easy. Katherine suffered from morning sickness that lasted well into the afternoon, and the Texas summer heat made her swell and ache. But Ryder was attentive to the point of being overprotective, hovering around her like a nervous mother hen. He hired a woman from town to help with the heavier housework, insisted Katherine rest every afternoon, and catered to her every craving no matter how strange. When her time came in late September, a year and a day after their wedding, Katherine labored for 18 hours before finally delivering a healthy baby boy with his father's dark hair and his mother's green eyes. Ryder was by her side the entire time, holding her hand and encouraging her, and when the midwife placed their son in his arms, Katherine saw tears streaming down his weathered face. "He is perfect," Ryder breathed, staring down at the tiny bundle with awe. "Katherine, he is absolutely perfect." "What should we name him?" Katherine asked, exhausted but glowing with happiness. Ryder thought for a moment, then said, "Robert, after my father. Robert Vaughn, if that suits you." "Robert," Katherine repeated, testing the name. "Yes, I like that. Hello, Robert. Welcome to the world, little one." Watching Ryder with their son was a revelation. The tough, taciturn rancher transformed into the most devoted father Katherine could have imagined. He would sit for hours holding Robert, talking to him in a low voice about the ranch and the horses and everything they would do together when the boy was older. He changed diapers without complaint, walked the floor with Robert when he cried at night, and looked at his son like he was the greatest miracle ever created. "I never knew I could love like this," he confessed to Katherine one night as they lay in bed with Robert sleeping in his cradle nearby. "I thought I loved you as much as it was possible to love someone, but this, having a child with you, it is like my heart had to expand to make room for even more love." Katherine kissed him softly. "I know exactly what you mean. Sometimes I look at the two of you together, and I can hardly believe this is my life, that I get to have this happiness after everything that came before." "You deserve every bit of happiness in the world," Ryder said fiercely, "and I am going to spend the rest of my life making sure you have it." The years passed in a blur of joy and hard work. The ranch prospered under their combined efforts, growing from a modest operation into one of the most successful in the county. They added on to the house as their family grew, welcoming a daughter they named Rose 2 years after Robert, then another son, James, 2 years after that. Katherine transformed the ranch into a real home, warm and welcoming and full of life. She planted gardens and fruit trees, kept chickens and a milk cow, and made sure there was always something delicious cooking on the stove. She taught her children to read and write, to be kind and strong, to appreciate the harsh beauty of the land that was their heritage. Ryder proved to be everything Katherine had hoped for and more. He was a devoted husband and father, a shrewd businessman, and a pillar of their small community. He served on the town council in Fort Worth, helped organize a school for the scattered ranch families, and was known far and wide as a fair and honest man. But it was in the private moments that Katherine loved him most. The way he would pull her into his arms as she worked in the kitchen and just hold her, breathing her in like she was oxygen. The way he looked at her across a crowded room, his eyes full of desire and devotion even after years of marriage. The way he still brought her wildflowers from the prairie, still whispered that he loved her every single night before they fell asleep. One evening, when Robert was 10, Rose was 8, and James was 6, the family sat together on the porch watching the sunset. The children were playing a game, their laughter ringing out across the prairie, while Katherine and Ryder sat close together on the porch swing, his arm around her shoulders. "You remember the day we met?" Katherine asked, leaning into his warmth. "Every detail," Ryder said. "You stepped off that stagecoach looking lost and determined and beautiful, and I knew right then that you were going to change my life. I just did not know how much. You told me you could only offer me work," Katherine reminded him, smiling at the memory. Ryder laughed softly. "I was trying to be practical, to keep my distance, but the way I looked at you must have given me away. I wanted you from that first moment, wanted you to stay not just as my housekeeper but as my wife, the mother of my children, my partner in everything." "I am glad you did," Katherine said. "I am glad you saw past the widow in mourning clothes to the woman beneath. I am glad you took a chance on me." "Best decision I ever made," Ryder said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Marrying you, building this life with you, it is everything I never knew I needed." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching their children play, watching the sun paint the sky in brilliant colors. Katherine thought about the terrified, broken woman who had arrived in Fort Worth all those years ago, desperate for work and a fresh start. She thought about how far she had come, how much she had healed, how thoroughly she had been loved. "What are you thinking about?" Ryder asked, always attuned to her moods. "How happy I am," Katherine said simply. "How grateful I am for this life, for you, for our children. How blessed I am to have found love when I least expected it." "We are both blessed," Ryder said. "Every single day with you is a gift, Katherine. I love you more now than I did the day we married, and I will love you even more tomorrow. That is my promise to you for as long as we both live." Katherine turned in his arms and kissed him, deep and sweet, not caring that their children could see. "And I love you, Ryder Vaughn, today, tomorrow, and always." As the sun set over the Texas prairie and their children's laughter filled the air, Katherine knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. She had come to this wild, beautiful land looking for nothing more than work and a new beginning. Instead, she had found a home, a family, and a love that would last a lifetime. The years continued to unfold like the pages of a beloved book. Robert grew tall and strong like his father, learning the ranching business with eager enthusiasm. Rose proved to have her mother's organizational skills and her father's head for business, keeping meticulous records of the ranch's operations from the time she was 12. James was the dreamer of the family, always sketching the prairie landscapes or writing poetry about the beauty he saw around him. Katherine and Ryder grew older together with grace, their love deepening with each passing year. Gray threaded through Ryder's dark hair, and lines etched themselves around Katherine's eyes, but they still looked at each other with the same intensity as that first day in Fort Worth. When Robert turned 18 and announced his intention to marry the daughter of a neighboring rancher, Katherine helped plan the wedding with joy in her heart. Watching her son stand at the altar, looking at his bride with the same devotion Ryder had shown her, filled Katherine with a profound sense of completion. They had built something lasting, something good, something that would continue long after they were gone. Rose surprised everyone by deciding she wanted to go to college in Dallas to study business. It was unusual for a young woman in 1891, but Katherine and Ryder supported her dream wholeheartedly, proud of her ambition and intelligence. James talked about becoming a teacher, wanting to share his love of literature and art with others. "We raised them right," Ryder said one night after Rose had left for school and James had gone to bed with yet another book. "They are all good people, kind and strong and true. Just like their mother." "Just like both their parents," Katherine corrected. "You have been the best father, Ryder, patient and loving and wise. They could not have asked for better." They were in their mid-40s now, still healthy and active but beginning to think about the future in more concrete terms. Robert was managing most of the day-to-day operations of the ranch, freeing Ryder and Katherine to pursue other interests. They traveled occasionally, visiting Dallas and San Antonio, even making one grand trip to New Orleans that left them with wonderful memories and a renewed appreciation for the simplicity of ranch life. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Ryder surprised Katherine with a party that brought together everyone they cared about. The ranch was full of neighbors and friends, their children and grandchildren, all gathered to celebrate 2 decades of marriage. As the evening wound down and the guests began to depart, Ryder led Katherine away from the crowd to the cottonwood grove where his parents were buried. They stood together in the fading light, his arms around her from behind, her head resting against his chest. 20 years, Katherine marveled. "It feels like both a lifetime and no time at all." "I know what you mean," Ryder said. "Sometimes I still feel like that nervous man meeting his new housekeeper at the stagecoach, afraid to hope for more than I had any right to expect. Other times, I cannot remember what life was like before you." Katherine turned in his arms to face him. "I was so lost when I came here, Ryder, so broken and afraid. You healed me with your patience and your love. You gave me a home and a family and a purpose. You gave me everything." "You gave me just as much," Ryder insisted. "More even. You brought life and light to this place. You turned a house into a home. You gave me children and grandchildren and a future I never dared to imagine. You loved me when I was too stubborn and foolish to believe I deserved it." They kissed as the last light faded from the sky. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built a life of extraordinary beauty from the simple raw materials of hard work and honest love. The next decade brought more changes. Rose returned from college with a degree and a husband, a kind young man who treated her like a queen. They settled in Dallas, where Rose opened a business helping ranchers market their cattle more efficiently. James became a teacher, just as he had dreamed, working at the school in Fort Worth and writing poetry in his spare time that was actually published in several literary magazines. Robert and his wife Sarah presented Katherine and Ryder with 5 grandchildren in quick succession, filling the ranch with noise and laughter and chaos. Katherine delighted in being a grandmother, teaching the children to cook and garden just as she had taught their father, while Ryder took them riding and taught them about the land and the animals. In 1903, 30 years after Katherine had first stepped off that stagecoach, she and Ryder celebrated their 30th anniversary with a quiet dinner at home, just the two of them. Robert and Sarah had taken the children to visit Rose in Dallas, giving them a rare evening alone. They sat on the porch after dinner, wrapped in blankets against the October chill, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. Katherine was in her early 50s now, her dark hair streaked with silver, her face lined but still beautiful. Ryder was graying at the temples and moving a bit slower than he used to, but his eyes were as keen as ever, and his love for Katherine burned as bright as it had 3 decades ago. "Do you ever regret it?" Katherine asked suddenly. "Marrying me, taking on a broken widow instead of finding some young, fresh-faced girl?" Ryder looked at her like she had lost her mind. "Katherine Vaughn, that might be the most foolish question you have ever asked me. Regret you? Regret the best thing that ever happened to me? Never, not for a single moment in 30 years. I just wonder sometimes," Katherine said softly. "You could have had anyone. You were handsome and successful and kind. Why did you choose me?" Ryder was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "Do you remember what you said to me that first day when I told you I could only offer you work? You said you were not afraid of hard work, that you might not look like much but you could earn your keep. And I looked at you, this woman who had traveled across the country alone, who had survived God knows what kind of hardship, who stood there tired and dusty but refusing to be defeated, and I knew. I knew you were strong enough for this life, brave enough to build something real with me. I knew I wanted you to stay forever." Tears slipped down Katherine's cheeks. "I love you so much, Ryder, more now than ever if that is possible." "It is possible," Ryder assured her, wiping away her tears with his thumbs, "because I feel the same way. Every year with you makes me love you more. Every challenge we face together, every joy we share, it all adds up to this enormous love that just keeps growing." They made love that night with the tenderness of long familiarity and the passion of people who still desired each other desperately. Afterward, they lay tangled together, talking in whispers about their children and grandchildren, about the ranch in the future, about all the small and large blessings of their life together. "Promise me something," Katherine said as sleep began to pull her under. "Anything," Ryder murmured. "Promise me we will grow old together, that I will not have to face this world without you." Ryder pressed a kiss to her forehead. "I promise to love you for as long as I draw breath, Katherine, and then I will love you from beyond if there is any way to do it. You are stuck with me for eternity." Katherine smiled in the darkness. "That sounds perfect." The years continued their steady march. Katherine and Ryder both slowed down as they moved into their 60s, content to let Robert run the ranch while they enjoyed their golden years. They spent their days tending Katherine's gardens, reading together on the porch, visiting their children and grandchildren, and simply being together. In 1910, when Katherine was 60 and Ryder was 62, they celebrated their 37th anniversary surrounded by their family. All three of their children were there with their spouses, along with 8 grandchildren ranging in age from 2 to 21. The house was full to bursting with love and laughter, and the kind of joyful chaos that comes from multiple generations gathering under one roof. As Katherine looked around the table at dinner, taking in the faces of the family she and Ryder had created together, she felt a wave of gratitude so intense it almost brought her to tears. This was what they had built from nothing but hard work and love. This legacy of good, kind, strong people who would carry on long after she and Ryder were gone. That night, after everyone had finally gone to bed, Katherine and Ryder sat together in the room that had once been her bedroom when she first arrived as his housekeeper. It was a guest room now, hardly used, but they sometimes came here to remember. "I was so scared that first night," Katherine confessed. "Alone in this room in a strange place, working for a man I did not know with no idea what the future held." "I was scared too," Ryder admitted. "Lying in my room down the hall, knowing you were just steps away, wanting you already but terrified of what that meant. I had been alone for so long that the thought of opening my heart to someone was almost paralyzing." "I am glad we were both brave enough to try," Katherine said, leaning against him. "I am glad you looked at me that first day and saw more than just a housekeeper. I am glad you promised me more with your eyes even when your words said you could only offer work." Ryder chuckled. "I thought I was being so subtle, so professional, but I could not stop looking at you, could not stop hoping that maybe, just maybe, you might stay." "I stayed," Katherine said simply, "and I have never regretted it for a moment." They eventually made their way back to their own bedroom, the master suite that had once belonged to Ryder's parents. Katherine got ready for bed slowly, her joints aching in the way they did more and more often these days. She caught sight of herself in the mirror and paused, studying her reflection. She was old now. There was no denying it. Her hair was more silver than dark, her face deeply lined, her body soft and rounded in ways it had not been in her youth. But when she looked at herself, she did not see the ravages of time. She saw a woman who had been deeply loved, who had loved deeply in return. She saw a mother and grandmother, a wife and partner, a woman who had survived hardship and found joy on the other side. Ryder came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and meeting her eyes in the mirror. He was old too, his hair white now, his face weathered by decades of sun and wind. But his eyes were the same storm gray that had captured her heart 37 years ago, and the way he looked at her still promised everything. "You are still the most beautiful woman I have ever seen," he said softly. "You need spectacles," Katherine joked, but her voice was thick with emotion. "I see you perfectly," Ryder insisted. "I see the woman who saved me from a life of loneliness. I see the mother of my children and the love of my life. I see my Katherine, and you are beautiful." They held each other in front of the mirror, two people who had weathered life's storms together and emerged stronger for it. Then they climbed into bed, Katherine curling into Ryder's side as naturally as breathing, and fell asleep in each other's arms. The seasons continued their eternal cycle. Spring came with wildflowers carpeting the prairie, summer with heat that shimmered on the horizon, fall with cool nights and brilliant sunsets, winter with sharp winds and occasional snow. Katherine and Ryder moved through the years with the contentment of people who had found their place in the world. They celebrated Robert's 40th birthday with a barbecue that brought the whole community together. They traveled to Dallas to see Rose receive an award for her business acumen. They attended James's wedding to a sweet young teacher who shared his love of literature. They welcomed more grandchildren and eventually great-grandchildren, their family tree spreading and flourishing. In 1918, on a mild spring evening, Katherine and Ryder sat together on the porch as they had done thousands of times before. They were both in their late 60s now, still healthy but aware that their time was growing shorter. They did not speak of it often, but the knowledge hung between them, bittersweet and undeniable. 45 years, Katherine marveled, looking at the simple gold band on her finger. We have been married for 45 years, Ryder. Best 45 years of my life, Ryder said, bringing her hand to his lips and kissing it gently. Though I have to say, every year with you is better than the last. Even now, Katherine asked. Even when we are old and creaky and cannot do half the things we used to do. Especially now, Ryder said firmly. Because now we have all those years of memories to look back on. We have children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. We have built something that will last long after we are gone. And we still have each other, which is all that really matters. Katherine blinked back tears. I used to think I knew what love was, but I did not. Not really. Not until you showed me. You taught me that love is not just passion and romance, though we have had plenty of that. It is also patience and partnership and showing up every single day, even when things are hard. It is building a life together brick by brick, moment by moment. You taught me that too, Ryder said. Before you, I thought love was something that destroyed you, that left you broken and alone. My parents loved each other so much that when my father died, my mother could not survive without him. I was terrified of that kind of love, but you showed me that love can also be a source of strength. That loving someone and being loved in return can make you stronger, braver, better. They sat in silence for a while, watching the sun set in a blaze of gold and crimson. Then Ryder stood, his joints protesting, and offered Katherine his hand. Dance with me, he said. There is no music, Katherine pointed out, but she took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. We will make our own, Ryder said, and he began to hum an old waltz as he guided her in a slow circle on the porch. They danced as the stars came out. Two old people swaying together in the darkness, still in love after 45 years of marriage. And if their steps were slower and less sure than they had been in their youth, their hearts beat in perfect rhythm, proof that some things only improved with time. Katherine and Ryder were blessed with a few more good years. They celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary in 1923 with a party that rivaled their 20th, surrounded by the sprawling family they had created. Katherine was 72 now, Ryder 74, and though their bodies were frail, their spirits remained strong. 50 years, Ryder said during his toast at the party, his voice still strong despite his age. 50 years ago, I met a woman who stepped off a stagecoach and into my life. I told her I could only offer her work, but she must have seen the truth in my eyes because she stayed. She stayed and made this house a home. She stayed and gave me children and a family. She stayed and loved me even when I was too stubborn to believe I deserved it. Katherine, you are the best thing that ever happened to me, and I thank God for you every single day. Katherine stood to respond, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Ryder Vaughn saw me when I was at my lowest point, when I had nothing to offer but a willingness to work hard. He gave me a chance when he did not have to. He was patient with me, kind to me, and eventually he loved me with a devotion I had never known existed. These 50 years have been the greatest gift of my life. Thank you, my darling, for choosing me. Thank you for building this beautiful life with me. I love you more than words can express. They kissed to thunderous applause from their assembled family, and if they held on to each other a little longer than necessary, no one mentioned it. They all understood that Katherine and Ryder were something special, a love story for the ages, and they were privileged to witness it. That winter was harsh, with bitter cold and heavy snow. Katherine caught a chill in February that developed into pneumonia. For 2 weeks, she fought the illness while Ryder sat by her bedside, refusing to leave except when absolutely necessary. Their children came and went, worried and helpless, but Ryder never wavered in his vigil. On a night when the wind howled outside and snow piled against the windows, Katherine's fever finally broke. She opened her eyes to find Ryder asleep in the chair beside her bed, his hand still holding hers, his face haggard with exhaustion and worry. "Ryder," she whispered, and he woke instantly. "Katherine," he breathed, moving to sit on the edge of the bed and cup her face in his hands. "Thank God." "You scared me half to death, woman." "I am sorry," Katherine said, her voice weak but clear, "but I am not ready to leave you yet. We still have more time." "Damn right we do," Ryder said fiercely. "You promised me we would grow old together, remember, and you always keep your promises." Katherine did recover, though it took weeks for her to regain her strength. Spring came eventually, as it always did, bringing warmth and new life to the prairie. Katherine and Ryder spent those months savoring every moment, acutely aware now of how precious time was. They took walks together through Katherine's gardens, admiring the flowers she had planted years ago that still bloomed faithfully every spring. They sat on the porch and watched their great-grandchildren play in the yard. They talked about their life together, sharing memories and laughing over old stories. One evening in late May, as they sat together watching the sunset, Katherine said quietly, "I'm not afraid of dying, you know. I have had a good life, a wonderful life. I have been loved and I have loved in return. If my time comes soon, I will face it with gratitude for everything I have been given." "Do not talk like that," Ryder said roughly, his hand tightening on hers. "You are going to be fine. We are going to have more years together." "I hope so," Katherine said. "But if we do not, if one of us has to leave first, I want you to know that you gave me everything I ever needed. You made me happy, Ryder, so incredibly happy, and I have no regrets." Ryder pulled her close, burying his face in her silver hair. "I love you, Katherine. God, I love you so much. You are my heart, my soul, my everything. I do not know how to exist in a world without you." "You will find a way," Katherine said, stroking his back soothingly. "You are the strongest man I have ever known, and you will not be alone. You have our children and grandchildren. You have this beautiful ranch we built together. You will carry on because that is what we do. We survive." They held each other as darkness fell, two people who had loved each other for more than 50 years, facing the future with courage and grace. The years were kind to them. Katherine regained her health and strength, and she and Ryder enjoyed several more good years together. They moved more slowly now, needed more rest, but their love never wavered. If anything, it grew even stronger as they faced the reality of their mortality together. In the spring of 1926, Ryder fell ill. It started as a simple cold but quickly developed into something more serious. He was 77 years old, and his body simply did not have the strength to fight the way it once had. Within a week, it was clear that he was failing. Katherine spent every moment by his side, holding his hand, talking to him, reading to him from his favorite books. Their children gathered, knowing the end was near, and the house was filled with the quiet grief of a family preparing to say goodbye. On a mild evening in early April, with the windows open to let in the spring breeze and the scent of Katherine's flowers drifting through the room, Ryder opened his eyes and looked at his wife. "Katherine," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I am here," she said, leaning close. "I am right here, my love." "Thank you," Ryder said, each word an effort, "for everything, for saying yes, for staying, for loving me." Tears streamed down Catherine's face. "Thank you for seeing me, for promising me more than just work, for giving me a life more beautiful than I ever dreamed possible." Ryder smiled, the expression transforming his pain-ravaged face into something peaceful and content. "I will wait for you," he said. "On the other side. However long it takes, I will wait." "I will find you," Katherine promised. "Wherever you are, I will find you again." Ryder's eyes drifted closed and his breathing slowed. Katherine held his hand as his children and grandchildren gathered around, all of them bearing witness to the end of a great love story. Just as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of gold and crimson, Ryder Vaughn took his last breath, a peaceful smile on his lips. Katherine sat with him for a long time after, still holding his hand, tears flowing silently down her wrinkled face. They had had 53 years together, more than many people could hope for, but it still was not enough. It would never be enough. "I love you," she whispered to his still form. "I will always love you. Thank you for being my husband, my partner, my heart. Wait for me, Ryder. I will come to you soon." They buried Ryder in the cottonwood grove next to his parents, in the ground he had worked all his life. The entire community turned out for the funeral, testament to the respect and affection people had for him. Katherine stood dry-eyed through the service, her children supporting her on either side, and spoke about the man she had loved for more than half a century. "Ryder Vaughn was the best man I ever knew," she said, her voice clear despite her grief. "He was strong and kind and honorable. He built this ranch with his own 2 hands and raised a family here that he could be proud of. But more than that, he loved me with a devotion and constancy that never wavered in 53 years of marriage. He promised me more than just work with his eyes on the day we met, and he spent the rest of his life keeping that promise. I was blessed beyond measure to be his wife, and I will miss him every day for the rest of my life." After the funeral, Katherine withdrew into herself. She was polite to visitors, kind to her children and grandchildren, but everyone could see that part of her had died with Ryder. She moved through the days like a ghost, going through the motions but without real engagement. Robert tried to convince her to move in with him and Sarah, but Katherine refused. "This is my home," she said firmly. "This is where Ryder and I built our life together. I am not leaving it." She spent her days tending her gardens, cooking meals that she barely touched, and sitting on the porch where she and Ryder had spent so many evenings together. She spoke to him sometimes, sharing her thoughts and feelings as if he were still sitting beside her. Her children worried, but they understood that this was how Katherine grieved. Summer came and went, then fall. As winter approached, Katherine grew more frail, her body seeming to fold in on itself without Ryder there to care for her. She did not complain, did not ask for help, just quietly faded like a flower after the first frost. On a cold December morning, Rose found her mother unresponsive in her bed. The doctor said it was her heart, that it had simply given out, but her children knew better. Katherine had died of a broken heart, unable or unwilling to continue in a world without Ryder. They buried her next to her husband in the cottonwood grove, and if anyone noticed that Katherine looked more peaceful in death than she had in the months since Ryder's passing, they did not comment. The entire community turned out again, mourning the loss of a woman who had touched so many lives with her kindness and strength. Robert stood at his mother's grave and spoke through his tears. "My mother came to Texas as a broken widow with nothing but a worn carpetbag and a willingness to work hard. She answered an advertisement for a housekeeper and found instead the love of her life. She and my father built this ranch into something great, raised a family, and showed all of us what true love looks like. They were partners in every sense of the word, and they loved each other with a devotion that transcended everything. Now they are together again, and I take comfort in knowing that their love story has not ended. It has just moved to a different place. Years passed, and the ranch continued to thrive under Robert's management and eventually his children's. The house that Katherine had transformed from a bachelor's residence into a warm, welcoming home remained in the family, passed down through generations. Katherine's garden still bloomed every spring, tended lovingly by her descendants. The porch where she and Ryder had spent countless evenings together became a favorite gathering place for family celebrations. The story of Katherine and Ryder Vaughn became family legend, told and retold to children and grandchildren as an example of what love should be. How a cowboy had told a widow he could only offer her work, but the way he looked at her promised so much more. How they had built a life together from nothing but hard work and honest affection. How they had loved each other faithfully for more than 50 years, through good times and bad, and how even death could not truly separate them. In the cottonwood grove where they were buried side by side, their headstones bore simple inscriptions. Ryder's read, "Beloved husband, father, and friend, he promised more than work, he gave everything." Katherine's read, "Beloved wife, mother, and friend, she answered an advertisement and found love." Between them, a third stone had been placed by their children, inscribed with words that captured the essence of their relationship. Together in life, together in death, together for eternity. A love story for the ages. And if sometimes, in the quiet evening hours when the sun set in brilliant colors over the Texas prairie, visitors to the grove felt a presence, a sense of two souls still keeping watch over the land they had loved and the family they had created, well, that was between them and the endless Texas sky. Katherine and Ryder Vaughn had found each other against all odds, had built something beautiful and lasting, and had proven that true love, once found, never truly ends. It just transforms, growing stronger and more beautiful with each passing year, living on in the hearts of those they touched and the legacy they left behind. The ranch that Ryder built and Katherine made a home still stood strong more than 100 years after that fateful day when a widow stepped off a stagecoach and into the arms of a cowboy who promised her everything with just a look. And in the end, that promise had been kept fully and completely, a testament to the power of love to transform, to heal, and to endure.